Top 10 richest countries in Africa. What comes to your mind when you think about Africa? You picture desert safaris, culture and curvy women with big men. Anyway, let's talk about the real Africa, the one that you haven't heard about. You may see Africa as a continent that houses some of the poorest countries in the world, but what you don't know is that there are some wealthy countries also flourishing in the African continent. Resources like diamonds, gold, silver, uranium, and oil have made some countries reach the top of the GDP charts. Wanna know more about them? 10. Tanzania. Where do we start this from? Okay, so this East African country is known for its vast wilderness areas and of course the very famous Mount Kilimanjaro. So obviously tourism plays a major role in the economy of the country that has pulled up to about $52 billion on the GDP chart. English is reserved for foreign trade and mediums of English which might soon be dropped. Another issue is that the economy is highly dependent on agriculture. Tanzania is highly vulnerable to environmental shocks. 9. Kenya. Kenya is the world's 48th largest country by total area but is the 27th most populous country. You know what we are hinting at, right? Kenya is densely populated, which as you know can go either of the two ways, positive or negative. Going by the GDP, which is about $75 billion, Kenya isn't doing too bad in the money matters. 8. Ethiopia. This African country has one of the fastest growing economies in the world and has the second largest population in Africa with about 102 million inhabitants. Ethiopia is the most populous landlocked country in the world. That sounds interesting. So all the population has done something good for the country, and that is raising its GDP to almost $81 billion. 7. Morocco. You think of all the amazing mountains, mosques and markets when the word Morocco is mentioned. But do you ever see this country as a leader in the matters of GDP? Probably not. But we are here to change that, because, with a GDP of $109 billion, Morocco is among the richest African nations. 6. Sudan. If you've ever been to Sudan, you would know that the country is amid an array of problems ranging from poor infrastructure to political conflicts. When so much is going wrong, how can there be wealth in the country? Well, even though Sudan's GDP is $117 billion, a lot of Sudanese people stay at or fall below the poverty line. 5. Angola. You are wondering what Angola is doing on this list. The picture that has been portrayed in the country is of poverty, right? Well, you aren't wrong. Even though Angola has reached $124 billion in GDP, it still is fighting with the horrors of poverty. 4. Algeria. The largest country in Africa is also one of the richest. Sounds cool. But where is the money coming from? Algeria has the 16th largest oil reserves in the world and the second largest in Africa, while it has the 9th largest reserves of natural gas. This explains the $170 billion GDP of the country. 3. Egypt. Egypt is on this list and we are so happy. No, not because we are biased towards the pyramids, but because it has one of the longest histories of any country, tracing its heritage back to the 6th-4th millennia BCE. Anyway, this Islamic country has over 97 million inhabitants who strive hard to take their country ahead in the race of GDP. 2. South Africa. Diversity is the word that best describes South Africa. Whether it is their multi-ethnic society or the languages are spoken there, South Africa celebrates diversity. And the southernmost country on the mainland of the Old World does not disappoint, with its GDP rocketing to $349 billion. 1. Nigeria. The giant of Africa is the most populated country in Africa with a population of 196 million people. Nigeria has the third largest youth population in the world, after India and China, with more than 90 million of its population under age 18. This surely worked in the country's favor. How else did the GDP reach a whopping $376 billion? Okay, we do have to credit the vast reserves of cocoa, feature articles, rubber and crude oil. Which of these African countries are you planning to visit? Please my channel subscribe.